You hear about some travelers who go to different countries and they're Black and maybe they're ostracized a bit. You know, got people like pointing at you, trying to take pictures of you, stuff like that. Now, that did actually happen, but in like a good way, right? Like, you know, your hair is beautiful. People saying, oh, I wish my hair was curly like your hair. I think we as Black people, you know, we know about CPT. Mexico takes that to a whole nother level. We actually had a situation where we were picked up because they didn't believe we were American. It was nuts. They put us an immigration ban and everything. It was crazy. You have to be willing to adjust your expectations. No matter how much research or prep you do, it's going to be different than what you thought it was going to be.
Today, I'm excited to be joined by Ashley Roberts, an author, a mother, and part of a Black family living abroad in Mexico. And she's even written a book, Moon Oaxaca, which is about her experiences and insights into the culture, food, and beauty of Oaxaca, Mexico. Hello, everyone. I am Mike Riley, and this is The Other Route. All right, and we are here on The Other Route with Miss Ashley C. Roberts, who is joining us all the way live from Oaxaca, Mexico. I said that right? Oaxaca, Mexico. Okay, I apologize. So, for everybody out there watching, we just had this whole conversation about how to pronounce this. It's Oaxaca, and it's spelled, Oxaaca, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like Oaxaca.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. No, it is Oaxaca.
Oaxaca. Okay, excellent. Well, we're gonna get into all of that because I can't wait to hear about all that and hear how you learn how to pronounce it yourself and everything like that. But Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. Here on The Other Route, we really like to dig into the lives of our Black expats and feel what it's like to get that sense of moving abroad, leaving everything behind. So, before we get started and get deep into the meats and potatoes and things, for those who might not know you yet, could you start by kind of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
So first, I have to give a little disclaimer that I am an introvert. So I'm much more comfortable with writing than I am with talking, so please bear with me. But yes, my name is Ashley. I am a homeschooling mom of 2. I enjoy travel so very much, obviously. I enjoy nature, spending time with my family, reading, writing. And I did just have my first book published, which is a travel guide for moon travel for Oaxaca. So, yeah.
That is excellent. We're going to get into that book too, because I was actually checking it out. I'm probably going to get myself a copy. They look like really, really, really great photographs. You make me want to take a trip down there. And don't worry about the introverted thing. I'm an extrovert, so we'll balance each other out.
Okay.
I'd love to rewind a little bit. So where did you grow up actually? And kind of take us a little bit through what your childhood was like.
Yeah. So I grew up in a suburb outside of Chicago. Just me and my parents. I have 2 older sisters, but they're like 20 years older than me. So I was kind of like an only child. I was left on my own for a lot as far as like playing and stuff and big imagination, loved to read and write even when I was a little kid. And really got into learning about other cultures as a child too. My father was in the Navy, so he had all kinds of stories about traveling to different countries in Asia. And my mother like loved learning languages herself. Like she was teaching herself Spanish, teaching herself French. So there was always an interest in, just learning about other cultures and places when I was a kid.
So that's awesome. And is that how you got the travel bug? What got you interested in the traveling? Is it because your father was in the Navy? Is it because you came from a family where that was kind of versed within their fabric, I suppose? They like to travel. You said your mom was learning different languages. What got you into the whole traveling thing?
I think that was a big part of it. It was like, yeah, I think that was part of it for sure. We traveled a lot, just in the U.S., but we would take a lot of road trips because my one sister moved down to Tennessee and my other sister moved to Arizona. My mother's from New York. So we would always take road trips to visit family, and I loved it. I loved being in different places, seeing different cities. Even as a little kid, I know some kids are like, oh, I hate road trips. Like, even my kids get a little antsy sometimes if it's anything over 30 minutes. Yeah, but I loved it. Always found it super exciting. In fact, when I was 13 or so, we visited my sister down in Arizona. And Tucson, where she's at, is not too far from Nogales, which is on the border. So we drove down there, and that was my first time ever being in Mexico. And I was just like, just like looking at everything, just loving the sights, the smells, the feeling of like being in a language I didn't understand. Like it was all super exciting for me.
That is so awesome. That's really cool. I think it's interesting that you say that. When I was a kid, no shade to my mother, but we didn't take a lot of road trips. So when I finally got the opportunity to start traveling a little bit, and I got to see different places, even in the United States, I can understand how it really expands your mind and makes you curious about doing things like that. Which brings me to my next question. So is that what sparked the idea of actually living abroad? Was it going to Mexico that first time and visiting your sister? She was there near Arizona, and you went to the other side of the border. Is that what happened, or was there like another moment that shifted your perspective and said, you know what, I'm going to live in another country?
No, I don't know if I can point to like one exact moment. But that was definitely like a cornerstone, right? Like something that was building towards that. It was that experience. A few years later, I would go back down to Mexico, with a youth group, like working at an orphanage, volunteering, that kind of thing. I love that experience as well. That's when I got to practice a little bit more of my Spanish, and I thought it was exhilarating trying to just trying to communicate in a whole nother language. When I was in college, I was able to visit the Philippines a couple times. For my internship, I went to Spain to teach English. And so I loved the feeling of being in another country. I thought it was exciting. It was fun. I just felt alive when I would do that. And so all of these experiences together just kind of led me to feeling like I want to live in a different country when I get older. I guess I can get bored easily in a way. So it's like I like stimulation. I like being in different environments. I like seeing different things and that feeling, that kind of like adrenaline rush, right? Just being in these different places, like it's kind of addicting a little bit. So all of those experiences together made me want to, and that's why I chose for my major, like teaching English as a second language, so that wherever I would go, I have a skill that I can use to help to make money wherever I would want to go in the world.
I definitely can relate to that. You and I, the first time I traveled around, like, you get that adrenaline rush. So I completely understand that. Uh, and you were learning Spanish as you were kind of going along. Was that kind of part of your lifestyle in the States before you made the move? It seems like you were kind of, you were kind of planting the seeds to make sure you were going to a place that, to move abroad at some point. Was that kind of what the lifestyle was like, or were you just like a normal schoolgirl?
I wasn't a normal school girl.
Okay.
I was a weirdo who like was
Yeah.
listening to like Arabic music.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah.
was into MMA, so I was that nerd.
Ah.
And I was also the oddball who did not take Spanish in high school. I took French, which I took French because, my mother, she was learning French. And because my grandfather, her father, he, was stationed in France during World War II. So he knew French. So I was like, oh, let me continue this legacy of learning French or whatever. Not one French speaker in, Chicago, but it's okay. So yes, I actually didn't learn Spanish until I was in Mexico or when I was in Spain, like just learning there because I
Right.
didn't know it.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to learn Spanish earlier this year because I was thinking about moving abroad to a Spanish speaking country myself. And so I got one of those online programs where you get the apps and everything. And in my older age, the only phrase I managed to really memorize was "Tengo dolor en mi espalda," which means I have pain in my back. Anyway, so anyway, let's move on. Let me ask you this about the move to Mexico. So why Mexico? And specifically, how did you decide on the location that you're living in right now?
Okay, so ooh, that is a loaded question because we did not originally choose Mexico, actually. When my husband and I first started talking about moving abroad, we weren't even looking at Latin America at first. At first, of course, we were looking at the motherland. Like, okay, let's move somewhere in Africa. We were looking at Tanzania, and then we're like, no, 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 let's do West Coast. Let's do Senegal. Maybe I could use my high school French and put it to work. But then we decided, okay, maybe for our first move, crossing an entire ocean might be a bit much, with our two small children. So that's when we started looking at Latin America, and we, through our research, found Nicaragua. And so that's where we were putting all of our efforts into moving to. We had gotten it to the point where we knew what city we were going to go to, what neighborhood we were going to live in, what school we were going to send our daughter to. And then the year that we were planning on moving, a big political uprising happened.
Oh.
It was a lot of student protesters, and the government came down hard on them, like murdering the protesters.
Oh,
It
what
was
year was this?
This was in 2018, I believe.
Okay, I do remember this. Yeah, I do remember hearing about this. Yeah, I
Oh
sure
my
do.
gosh. Yeah, we were trying to move down there. And so that threw all of our plans off because can't move there now. And so we were kind of at a loss at what to do because we had already pulled out of so much of our life. Like we hadn't enrolled our daughter for the next year of school because we were going to be gone. We had sold a bunch of our belongings and stuff. So we were just like, oh no. Luckily, a contact that we had made in Nicaragua, she had like fled and she moved to Mexico. And she told us, why don't you guys give Mexico a try? And so we did. And that's how we landed in Mexico.
Okay, that's a pretty interesting story. That just wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't just. Oh, we just decided to move. And then we're gonna go here to hear that there was a political uprising, that
Yeah.
kind of caused that shift. Is that's pretty interesting. I'm glad you actually talked about that because that's something that I think people who decide to move abroad, that's something they should definitely research. Um, uh, s- yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the decision to move abroad, actually, could you kind of just walk us through the move itself? Like, what were some of the logistics and the arrangements that you had to handle? I know you said that you had to talk to your people in Nicaragua and things like that. You had to get all that set up, but what were some of the like more heavier logistics? You had already been kind of used to traveling at that point because you had already went to Spain for your intern, or excuse me, for your I think you said it was in college. You did that to teach English.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. So walk us through that. What was that like? Was it tough, or can you just get up and move?
so I think it definitely depends on what kind of person you are or what your family dynamic is. For better or worse, my family, we're planners, but at the same time, we just kind of do things. And that might not work for everyone. So hindsight is 2020, right? So if if I knew the things I knew now, we probably would have been a little bit more strategic. I think part of it too was that we had put so much planning into the Nicaragua thing, and then that, went up in flames. So we didn't really have the same amount of time or energy to be like, okay, let's get all of our ducks in a row for Mexico. So when we moved, I mean, we didn't do the storage unit thing. So everything that we had, we gave away or sold. Besides the things that we were going to take with us, we didn't do any type of shipping containers, anything like that. Some people do that. Whatever could fit into 8 suitcases was basically what we brought. So yeah, so we didn't have to worry about that so much. We got down there. We had found a rental before we moved. But now, again, hindsight being 2020, we rented this place sight unseen. We had just trusted, some friends that we had made down there. Hey, can you guys check this place out for us? And they're like, oh yeah, my cousin, sister-in-law, they got this, rental, it'll be great. And, they kind of showed us with the phone, and we're just like, okay, yeah, that seems fine. Got there, we're just like, oh no, like this, yeah, it wasn't a nightmare, but it wasn't what we had wanted either. So that's the whole thing too. That we learned that, renting in the United States is very different from renting in Mexico. Responsibilities that landlords have in the United States, those responsibilities are on you and the renter. So things like that. And that was a whole big thing that we had to go through because a lot of the issues that we had at first with renting, we're thinking like, oh my gosh, these people are being racist to us. They're trying to trick us. They're being horrible. And it's just like, no, like just it's a different cultural expectation where it's just like, we're basically just providing this home for you, depending on who you have. And I guess we could get into that. We ended up moving from the first city that we landed in Mexico, and that rental experience was much better. So, I mean, it's a little bit of both. And we can get into that if you want, but
Yeah, yeah, I would love to talk about that a little bit. Actually, that was actually kind of segueing into my next question. Was once you guys got settled in there in Mexico, what were some of the biggest surprises about life in Mexico, and what were some of the toughest things that you had to adjust to? Was it the understanding how the culture works out there as far as living arrangements and the logistics of living, or was it learning the language? Was it enrolling the kids in school? Was it knowing the good spots to know where to get the good food? I know that could be tough for a lot of people, like a person like myself. So just out of curiosity there, and yeah, and once you guys got settled in, what were some of the things that surprised you the most about life in Mexico?
Some surprises that we had, I mean, a lot of the surprises were like good surprises. In some ways, things weren't as difficult as we thought they would be. We found that the people could be very welcoming in some ways. Like you hear about some travelers who go to different countries and they're black and maybe they're ostracized a bit. You know, we got people like pointing at you, trying to take pictures of you, stuff like that. Now, that did actually happen, but in like a good way, right? So it's like, and I'm going to be speaking mostly of my Oaxaca experience because we did live in different places in Mexico, but Oaxaca is like my favorite. So, in Oaxaca, because there's such a heavy Afro-Mexican presence, especially along the coast, it's like the most concentrated in the whole country, right?
Oh,
So we didn't stick out so very much. Like the people in Oaxaca are brown, like various shades of brown to like light brown to even a little darker than me. So, that was nice. That was nice. But even with that being said, my hair, if it's in a fro, it gets a lot of attention. My kids usually have their hair in froze and it gets a lot of attention, but it's not like negative attention. It's very positive. Like people are like, oh, tus chinos son de, like, you know, your hair is beautiful. People saying, oh, I wish my hair was curly like your hair. Or saying like, oh, my grandmother has hair just like yours. So very positive, like, oh, the color of your skin is so pretty. You know, that feels
oh, yeah.
weird in a way, but then it's also like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like I wasn't expecting that. So they're very like affirming in that way. But then it's hard too because, you know, people want photos with you. People want photos with your kids. People want to touch your hair. Maybe they're touching your hair without asking. Maybe they're touching your kids' hair without asking. So
Oh.
that's just like, oh my God, like,
Was that a normal thing? That did that happen often?
yeah, yeah, a lot. So, yeah, so it happens often, which is also weird though, because I'm like, y'all have Afro Mexicans. Like, I know I'm not the only Afro haired person you've seen. Other surprising things. I don't know if it should be surprising, but just how welcoming they are of children. Like, Mexican culture, you know, they love children. They have a whole holiday, called Dia del Niño, which is, you know, Kids Day. So having our kids in Mexico, I think helped us a lot. Because, you know, they see these cute kids and they're like, oh, they're giving at the mercado, they're giving free fruit to our kids or candy or whatever. So that was really nice. A lot of the restaurants will have little play areas set up for kids. So that was so helpful. Me and the husband, because it's like, you know, I don't know if you've ever, you know, tried to sit down to a nice meal and you have two little ones with you and it's almost impossible. But in Mexico, it was like, oh, here's this playhouse for y'all while we wait for the food to come. So just very family friendly. That was a wonderful surprise. So those were a lot of good things. Some not great surprises were, like I said, learning what you as the renter are responsible for and what your landlord is responsible for. I knew about the whole, like, you know, different time schedule in Mexico. You know, I think we as Black people, you know, we know about CPT. Mexico takes that to a whole nother level. So just knowing that if someone is supposed to come by tomorrow to fix your plumbing or something, might be tomorrow morning, might be
Oh,
tomorrow,
really?
might be the next day. Like, yeah. And it's not like an insult. Like, you know, we in the United States are like, oh man, they're insulting my time. They're insulting my, you know, it's nothing personal. It's just, that's the way it is. So there's a different relationship to time and things like that. So it's like just having to get out of and it's hard to, you learn how much Americanness you have. I think I know for myself, because, you know, I think of myself as like a Black American first, right? Not even so much as an American. But then when you are in another country, it's like, oh, you're an American. You have certain thoughts that come from the wider culture that you might, you know, that you're really not aware of till you're in a situation where you know, where you're at isn't thinking like that at all. So,
Yeah, yeah. That could be an interesting adjustment, just the cultural adjustment itself. You know, understanding how different people live. It can, you know, it can be completely alien to people, especially a lot of people who've have never left the States before. Let me ask you about the language barrier. You said that Spanish was something that you had to become more accumulated to understanding and things like that once you were in Mexico, as opposed to prior moving there. What was that like? Was that a rough adjustment? Especially, I would imagine that y'all didn't live in the, in the touristy areas where people speak a lot of English. I would imagine you may have lived somewhere where that may have not have been the case. So, I know people who moved to Mexico and that was a problem. What was that like for you?
Oh, okay. So yeah, like when we got down there, we didn't know any, the little bit of Spanish you pick up just because, having friends, having Spanish speaking friends or things like that. So basic stuff, sure. But nothing really. Thankfully, the people down there, when they see that you're trying to learn, they will try to kind of meet you halfway. Like there was a time I think early on in Oaxaca, we were kind of lost on the bus, and our Spanish wasn't great at the time. And they were really trying to help us. Like we were trying to speak our broken Spanish. They were maybe speaking the teeny bit of English, but they helped us figure it out. So I think as long as you're trying, because there's of course the stories of the Americans who moved down, and they live in their little gringo ghettos and they're not trying to learn anything. And so there's that ugly stereotype, right? But when people see, oh man, you're really trying to learn this language, even though you sound like a toddler, like, okay, we can respect that. So that was our experience. Now, luckily for us, we did have our daughter in school. And she was going, so we've done lots of different schooling options while we've been down there. But for the most part, for the first couple schools she was in, we did a Waldorf school when we were in Merida. We moved from Merida to Oaxaca. We put her in public school because it was like a block away from her house. She's the only English speaking kid in the whole school. So she had to learn Spanish. But I remember when I realized how much Spanish she was learning, we were at a park one day and she had seen one of her friends from school. And the little girl comes up and is like, da 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 da. And my daughter's like, da 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 da. And they're just da 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 da. And I'm
Oh, mind
but
blown.
yes, and the girl's mom was like, "Oh, tu hija, que bien español." I'm just like, "See," like I didn't know she was speaking all that. So our daughter has greatly surpassed us. Me and Dad, she's our translator. It's so bad, but she's our translator. I had a whole situation where I had to go to the hospital, and my poor baby girl had to be the translator for that. I don't. So yeah, so my Spanish is not still that great. It's like from year 1 to 3, I was like, da-da, and then I just kind of plateaued. So that kind of sucks. But
Did you just like kind of pick up on it? Or did you have to like open up a book and like learn like this means this means this means that?
I definitely need to do more book learning as basically just being out and about, either with friends or, just daily, every day at the mercado, just learning how to talk, learning how to order at a restaurant. Going to different events and talking to people there. My husband's Spanish is better than me, but of course he's the extrovert. So he's, he's a big talker anyway. But it's been interesting. Like I should write about like how to learn a language when you're an introvert, when you don't even speak that much in English. But yeah, so my daughter is great. Interestingly, my son, he can understand Spanish. He does not enjoy speaking it. I don't know why. Actually, I could probably guess why. I think because my daughter was able to go to school before COVID happened. And so she was really able. Okay, yeah, I'm answering my own question. So she was really able to learn, before the world shut down. And then when he was school age, when he would have been going to preschool and stuff, everything was shut down. So that's probably why.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he can understand Spanish, but he, has reservations about speaking it unless he's like with little kids his own age. But
Yeah, I can understand that. I can remember for me growing up, I was taking Spanish class while you were taking the French class. I was taking the Spanish class and in high school, and it was just the conjugating of the verbs and how to pronounce certain things. I still have trouble pronouncing certain things, like like the name of the town you live in. It's not Oaxaca. It's Oaxaca. Anyway, yeah, I think I probably said it wrong again. But anyway, even though we've been saying it this whole time. So I can understand that kind of frustration. But let me ask you, because you were talking about the way, by the way, that's so cool that your daughter is your translator like that. I think that's awesome. But how did your children adjust to the move? I know your daughter was a little bit, had kind of was a little more versed in that. But when you were moving, eh, going from the United States to another country, how was that like for your children? And
So my daughter, when we moved down, how old was she? She was like 5.
oh, okay.
It was like 1.5. So I don't know. She was just excited as long as she's with mom, dad, whatever. And again, Mexico is so very family friendly. So like I said, we're going to restaurants. She's getting to play, lots of playgrounds, I mean, Mexico is just a beautiful place to be for a kid. It's like, you see the people selling, different beautiful things on the street. There's all kinds of treats, ice creams, pastries, candies. In Oaxaca, especially a lot of festivals, a lot of parades, a lot of, it's just an amazing, colorful, gorgeous kaleidoscope of a place to be, especially for a kid. So she adjusted beautifully. She adjusted beautifully. Like I said, she took to the language really well. For my son, he was happy to be there, happy to run around, happy to be free. Something that I will say in Mexico is that, kids are kind of allowed to be kids. Like, my son is very much a, like, I had a friend describe him as like all boy. So he's just very, bouncing around everywhere, talking, rough and tumble. Yes, yes, indeed. So that is him. And I feel like in the States, especially, and especially for Black boys, yeah, you gotta be, tone that down, quiet, sit down. What's wrong? You got ADHD. Like, what is going on with you? There's some kind of problem that we have to fix.
Yes.
So like we'd be, as he got older, we'd be somewhere and he's kind of, bouncing around or, being super talkative or whatever. And cause I still have that in me where I'm trying to like quiet him down and have him sit down, like do all this stuff. And, I had a waiter tell me like, oh, that's un niño, like he's a boy, he's a kid, like, he's fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like, that's not the only time that's happened where it's just like, oh, they're kids, they're fine. Let them play, let them be loud. It's fine. Yeah, our kids have adjusted, have kind of flourished being in that environment, right?
That is great. That's such a contrast from here in the United States, where kids are, please get those kids, make them behave, make them, stuff like that. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah,
No, 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 no.
yeah, yeah. I find that pretty interesting, and I think it's great that Mexico has that children friendly environment like that. Now, I mean, do you guys take your kids with you when you travel to other places, to other countries, or that's if you guys still travel, or do y'all just kind of just stay rooted there in Mexico, or in Oaxaca, specifically?
Yeah, so we actually became pretty nomadic in the past couple years. So in Mexico, like we kind of rotate, like Oaxaca, we spend time in Veracruz, which is the neighboring state, and then also Mexico City. So one of the things that we do commercial modeling and acting. Our daughter was the one who actually started that in the States before we left. She became, SAG. She's in the SAG union and everything.
Oh, hey, cool.
So she's doing that. And then we were happy to see that in Mexico City, they have a lot of commercial acting opportunities. In fact, a lot of the commercials you see on TV in the US are being filmed in Mexico. Like we've been on set for H&M, Expedia, Hotels.com, Poise. Like, we've auditioned for different things from everything from like KFC to lotion. Like, so it's like all these Dawn Power Wash. So it's like all these different products being sold in the US are actually doing their commercial filming in Mexico City because the cost of production is a lot cheaper.
Yeah, yeah. I live here in Hollywood, and trust me, they're not being filmed out here anymore. So anyway,
No.
go ahead.
So yeah, so we've kind of been traveling around different places where we don't necessarily have just one base in Mexico anymore. Although Oaxaca is always going to feel like home because it's our favorite place to be. It's beautiful. It's like the cultural and culinary capital of Mexico. So yeah, so that's always feels like home. But yeah, we take them with us everywhere.
Oh, that's great. So they get the opportunity to kind of understand, and maybe even they themselves may get bit by the travel bug. And you may be visiting your kids in Tanzania one day, maybe because they get the opportunity to travel as well. I think that's really great. I think that's great. Let me ask you something that so many Black expats are very curious about. What's it like I mean, I know earlier you and I were talking about when you were in Mexico and everybody's kind of curious about you. They're touching your hair, they're looking at your skin, they're taking photographs of you. Me personally, I'm a complete ham, so I would love that. But what about other people? Like, did you experience like any type of racism in Mexico, or did you experience any type of, I understand that being an American down there, especially recently because of what's going on up here with our attitudes towards immigration and things like that. There can be a little bit, I don't want to say hostility, but there could be a little animosity. What's that been like, or have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, so like anti-blackness exists everywhere, unfortunately, right? So Mexico is no exception. So there are two parts to this, right? So not Oaxaca. Mexico has its own like Afro-Mexican population, right? So their experience as Afro-Mexicans is similar to like, our experience here in the United States, where, they're cut off from opportunities. They're cut off from resources. They get pulled over a lot of times because the police or immigration don't even believe that they're Mexican. They think they're, like, oh, y'all can't be Mexican. Like they'll make them sing the national anthem to prove that, they're actual Mexican citizens. So they go through all of that, right? However, as a Black foreigner in Mexico, once they realize that you are, a Black foreigner and they perceive that, that means, okay, you got some money, they're going to treat you differently, right? But yeah, we've experienced being followed around in stores or random stuff like that. But my husband will be quick to correct that kind of behavior. And then it's all like, oh, lo siento, disculpe, no, it's like, this whole thing where here the confrontation might go a little differently. So it definitely exists down there. Now, interestingly, as the United States is having its thing with immigration, Mexico is also having its thing with their southern border too, where they're having an influx of, migrants from Honduras, Venezuela, Haiti, and different places. And a lot of times those are the darker skinned folks of those nations. And just like the United States is treating immigrants here, Mexico is also treating them the same in a lot of ways. Yeah, we actually had a situation where we were picked up because they didn't believe we were Americans. Yeah, it was nuts. They put us an immigration ban and everything. It was crazy.
Holy shit. Wow.
But I don't know why they let us go. I personally believe it's because my son was like screaming the whole entire time.
Oh, their children with you too? They picked your children up too?
They picked all of us up. We were all on immigration there. It was nuts. And like we're showing them our passports, we're showing them our papers, like, hey, we're here legally. Here's our American passport. And then we just started getting pissed. Like at first we were trying to speak Spanish, and then we just went into like full like whatever American mode, like y'all can't do this to us. We're from yeah. So these are situations you have to deal with. We travel by bus a lot because the buses down there are so nice, like not like Greyhound at all, but like plush TV screens, like really beautiful buses. So we travel with those a lot. And if you travel at night, especially, the buses regularly get pulled over by immigration. We might be on the bus, a whole bunch of Mexicans, of course. There might be a handful of like white foreigners and, us. We might have our papers asked for more so than the white foreigners, things like that. But nothing that makes us really feel like in danger. Even when we were with the immigration situation, we never felt like our lives were in danger. Like here, if you're having a interaction with law enforcement where you're like, oh God, I'm about to be a hashtag or something. Like down there we felt indignant. We were angry, but we didn't fearful for our lives or anything like that.
That didn't, excuse my expression, but that didn't scare the shit out of you?
It's weird. I guess we should have been scared. Maybe it was our naivety. I don't know, but we were just more angry that it was happening. And the whole time, like, it's not like they were rough with us. They didn't touch us or anything. They're just like looking at our passports and, looking at our visas. They're just like, but they let us go. I don't know if they were waiting for a bribe, because that happens a lot where, if the police pick you up, it's like you're supposed to bribe them to get out of whatever situation, but we weren't going for that. So I don't know. It was a really bizarre situation.
I mean, well, from a parenting perspective, how does that make you feel about raising a family in Mexico as compared to raising one in the United States? I mean, for just in general, not even just with that particular situation.
Well, I'm not going to lie. After that point, we got a little less adventurous to where we were going to. At first, we were very much the, oh man, we're going to all the neighborhoods. We're going to visit all the places because, da 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 da. We're not like normal tourists. We're not going to just stick to Cancun type places. We're going to, so that's how we even got in that situation. We were in a place that we probably really shouldn't have gone, but we really thought since we were Americans and had our papers in order that it wouldn't have mattered, but we learned that it did, unfortunately. So now we kind of just stick to not even touristy places, but just places that we might know somebody in or that's closer to a bigger city and, things like that.
At least I'm glad you got out of that. And, I'm glad you're here. And that's quite a story. That's a little bit of a testimony to what it must be like for people out here who are going through the same thing. Yeah, it is awful. It is a very awful thing. Let's switch gears here a little bit. I kind of want to talk about the practical side of life. Let's talk about the day-to-day life. What's it like with the day-to-day life? How do the finances compare? What's it like, rent and food and transportation? What's that like compared here to living in the United States? I can tell you as a Los Angelino, boy, oh boy.
I don't know how you do. We've had the opportunity to like travel the West Coast for the past few months, and yeah, Los Angeles was fun to visit for like half a day. Like,
yeah, man, it's cool. Yeah,
because we did the whole like requisite, trip to Disneyland. Our kids were old enough talking to, like even in Mexico, there are commercials about Disneyland.
Right.
So, we took them there and they're like, oh, you know what? Let's go to LA and we could spend the night in LA. And got to LA, looked at those hotel prices. Just like, all right, I'm going to stop for a second and keep on driving, kids. Like, got our little marathon burger and just kept going. Like, nah, gotta keep going. But,
great burgers, by the way. Yeah.
But yeah, so the cost of living in Mexico, depending where you are in Mexico, is of course a lot lower. Now in Oaxaca, is incredibly culturally rich. It is, I think, the second poorest state in the nation.
Oh.
So
Oaxaca's a state,
not
a city itself, but a state.
So you have Oaxaca the state and you have Oaxaca the city, which is the capital of Oaxaca state.
Okay.
So
okay, like New York. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, so to give a quick thing about Mexico. So Mexico is broken up into states like the United States. I think it's about 32 states that they have. So yeah, so Oaxaca as a state is one of the poorest. So the cost of living, if you're coming from, the United States, Canada, somewhere in Europe, it's going to be a lot lower. Depending on how you want to live. My family, what was most important for us was freedom of time. So we wanted time to spend together as a family. So we choose, inexpensive modes of living. We rent apartments that aren't in the touristy areas, that are more local. We live more like locals. We go to the mercado for our food, not necessarily the supermarkets that they have. And we live pretty simply, but we allow ourselves to like splurge on things that we really might like sometimes. But we have a pretty simple lifestyle. When we were doing schooling, we did do private schools. We did Waldorf, Montessori, like I said. Even then, the cost per month was like for both kids was maybe $300 for both of them. Whereas in the United States, if you want to send your kid to a Montessori school or a Waldorf school, it's maybe going to be $700, maybe even $1,000 a month.
You said it's Waldorf school? Is that like private school?
Yeah, Waldorf. You can kind of think of Waldorf as like Montessori's hippie sister, kind of. It's probably not the most accurate way to describe it, but yeah, this is the alternative way of educating kids, very nature-based, very gentle. Yeah, and we even sent our kids to a forest school where they had school all day in the forest, literally.
Yeah, things like that?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, like I could talk to you forever. So the education in the kid bit is where I really like talking about it. But yeah, we were sending our kids to a forest school and they used different modalities. Like they had some, Waldorf and Montessori ideas going on in there. But yeah, every day they would literally be in the forest, this beautiful forest, just mossy and gorgeous. And here, it's, how much was it? It was like, for both of them, like 200-ish, 250 for both of them together a month. If you were trying to find something like that in the States, that would be
thousands a month. Thousands. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was an experience for them. So
yeah, that is so interesting. And what about transportation? And what about jobs too, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, I know as far as transportation is concerned, I know you guys say that you take the bus a lot of places, but is it easy to get around in Oaxaca? Is it Oaxaca, excuse me? And I know Mexico City has great public transportation, but is it easy to get around there? And is it easy to find a job there? If somebody goes there, are they going to be able to, I know many expats I speak to, they fall into the I went and taught English route, and that's how I make a living.
Yeah.
Like, how was that like for you guys down there?
Yeah, so teaching English is probably the easiest way
Yeah.
to support yourself, wherever you go, wherever you might go, outside the country, because in a lot of places, if you're a foreigner coming into another country, it's like, man, they're trying to give employment to their own people. So unless you're coming with a very specialized kind of skill, and also depending on what visa you have, some visas you're not allowed to work. If you're trying to get like any type of temporary or permanent residency, at least Mexico, unless you have like specific business side, like things that aren't taking away from the people, like I wouldn't necessarily say to have the idea that you're about to go down there to find a job. Working online is probably the easiest thing to do, especially because you want the hack is to get like United States dollars to spend and turn into pesos, right? Because even though the exchange rate isn't as good as it used to be, unfortunately, it's still, it's like 19, 20 pesos to a dollar. It used to be like 24, 25 a few years ago. If you're coming down, try to have some kind of business play already in place. Like you're working online, you're teaching English, or you're doing, the commercial acting and modeling thing, something. But yeah, definitely have something in mind.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What and like that's pretty good advice to give to somebody who's thinking about moving down there, to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, make sure that you have your visa situation, make sure you check out the political climate in whatever country you're deciding to move to. What advice would you give? What other advice would you give to anybody who's making this consideration to possibly move abroad, specifically if they're possibly thinking about even moving to Mexico?
First say, let yourself dream a little bit. Really figure out what it is you want out of life. Like for us, for our family, we wanted freedom. We wanted the freedom to be with each other, to grow together as a family, to be able to travel, to not be tied down to anything. That's what our dream was, and that's the dream that we're living. Other people might want, very luxurious lifestyle, which is very attainable in Mexico for, a fraction of the cost if you were trying to do that in the United States. Or maybe someone is trying to do the off the grid thing and really live, close to nature. So figure out what your why is, figure out what it is you want to do. What do you want your life to look like? And that's going to, be different for everyone. But Mexico, there are options for everybody. Like I said, there are 32 states, if I'm not mistaken, 32 states in the nation. And even in Oaxaca, Oaxaca has 16 different ethnic groups, not including the Afro-Mexicans. And so each region, and Oaxaca is broken up into different regions, and each region is so different than the other one. You have the coast, which has the most beautiful beaches, I think, in Mexico. You have the mountains, you have the Central Valley, you have so many different regions, and each one has its own languages, its own customs, its own food, its own geography. So there's, something for everyone, I feel like, in the state of Oaxaca, but in Mexico as a whole. Try to visit before you go. Now, it's funny I say that because we did not do that. But if I could, I would have visited before we came down. And it thankfully worked out for us.
Yeah.
And it also worked out for us because we're very flexible. So that's something else. If you are choosing to live outside your own country, but even any type of move you're making, like you have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to adjust your expectation. No matter how much research or prep you do, it's going to be different than what you thought it was going to be.
Very cool. Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us that advice. I completely agree that you have to be a malleable person. Things never necessarily work out the way that you suspect. Even if you're just going to visit, sometimes things don't work out that way. So that's really good that you have that kind of spirit and that you have that spontaneity too. And speaking of spontaneity, because y'all just kind of picked up and moved and you enjoyed that freedom and you enjoyed and that's one of the reasons why you got out there. So let me ask you this: do you see yourself and your family staying in Mexico long term? or do you plan to ever move back to the U.S. or move to another country or anything else like that?
So the way it's worked out for the past couple of years, we've been kind of not equally splitting, but we've been visiting the U.S. more, mostly for work. So we're on the West Coast because we found a bunch of little jobs. So we're just like, okay, let's, make these commercials, do these branding things. And we've been able to travel and visit, like I said, Disneyland and different national parks and stuff like that. And that's been super cool. Because when we first moved down to Mexico, we were very much like, bye United States, never want to see y'all again. We're good. But there are a lot of beautiful things about the States. And the national parks of the United States are, they're gorgeous. And that is something I missed in Mexico, being able to be like, there are a lot of beautiful natural spaces in Mexico, but just, in the United States, I don't know, it's just a different feeling. I think we kind of want a best of both worlds type thing, where we can enjoy both things, where we can visit our family, but still have a base in Mexico, maybe have a base in the United States. I do want to do, especially me and my husband were just talking about this week. We want to go more places. And we're thinking like, do we even want to, get residency different places? Like, not to be doomsday or anything like that, but I really do encourage people who can travel and who can get permanent residency in different countries to do so. Do with that what you will, but I really think it's a valuable thing. Like, you don't have to give up citizenship or get a different passport. I'm just talking about permanent residency. Getting permanent residency in different countries, I feel like is a very wise move in these times.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, got that in Mexico. Do we want to do that in other places? And I think we do. Like, the world is so big and there's so many things and places, I still want to go to Senegal. I still want to go to Tanzania. I want to go to Japan. I've been wanting to go to Japan since I fell in love with Sailor Moon as a little girl. I got all my son's into Pokemon now, and I'm like, oh, they're opening a Pokemon world next year. We should go. So I want to see different places. Freedom of movement is definitely our thing. So
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll be able to talk to you when you move to Japan or Antarctica or wherever. You know what I mean? You'll be like, this is where I am. I say Antarctica all the time because that's one place I want to go. I don't want to I don't want to live there, but man, I want to see it so bad. I kind of want to open up the first McDonald's there and serve I wouldn't say penguin burgers because that'd be pretty evil, but you know what I mean? Whatever. Like different types of fish they have there or whatever. Anyway. But yeah, that is so cool. That's great that you have that sense of adventure, and I would love to see where your travels take you. So I got one last thing before we wrap up. I kind of want to talk about your book because I was kind of peeping it out. The new book of Moon Oaxaca. I think it's so cool. All the moon pictures that you got in there. I'm actually probably more than likely I am going to get myself a copy. But let me ask you, what inspired you to write it, and what can readers expect from it? What's the whole thing with the moon there? Did you take all those pictures, by the way?
yeah. So okay, so
Cool.
let's well, not all of them. Probably 75% of them I took. I was so glad to be able to do it. I snuck my kids in there, a couple pictures. I'm like, yes. But yeah, so what it is Moon Travel Guides. They actually, it's a brand, and they have travel guides, kind of like Lonely Planet, for everywhere. Like, they have a travel guide for everywhere. And a couple years ago, they contacted me and they were like, hey, got to update our guidebook for Oaxaca. Would you be willing to do this? I was like, yes, I'd love to do that. So that's how that came about. So the past couple years, just been doing research, going back to places that I loved, and also visiting places that I had actually never been before in Oaxaca. Was super fun and crazy, but very fun.
Yeah. Look like it. It looks so adventurous. Yeah. So we'll definitely put a plug down there for it so that way people can know where to pick it up. Yeah. It looks like a great book. Looks like there's some really cool natural sites there. I know Mexico has a lot of caves, and I don't know if there's a lot of Oaxaca, but it seems like there's some caves going on. Yeah. A lot of cool rock formations and everything. So that's so cool. So is it Ashley Corrine Roberts, right?
Yeah, Ashley Corinne.
Okay, Ashley Corinne Roberts. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your insight on the other route, what it's like to live in Mexico and Oaxaca specifically, and giving us some understanding of what it's like to be an expat and live abroad. I think this is very educational. It's a very great conversation. Thank you so much. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. Your story shows the courage, creativity, and openness it takes to step into a new chapter abroad. Make sure you pick up Ashley's book, Moon Oaxaca, and follow her family's journey on Instagram at The Black Family Abroad. The link is in the description. Until next time, keep carving your own path, keep rewriting the narrative, and remember, there's always the other route.